welcome to Dialogue. Expanding people-to-people ties, including students' exchanges, plays an important role in studying China-U.S. ties. Chinese President Xi Jinping announced last year in San Francisco that China is ready to invite 50,000 young Americans to China on exchange and study programs over the next 5 years. How should China and the U.S. cultivate cross-cultural talents so that the two sides can improve relations? How can people-to-people exchanges help boost government-to-government diplomacy? Joining me today is Michael Elliott, President of Amherst College. I'm Xu Qinduo. Welcome to Dialogue, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what's your impression of China? This is not your first time to China, right?
That's true. It's not my first time to China, but it's my first time in several years, and the first time that I've come since I became president of Amherst College. It's always a thrill to be here. Beijing is such a bustling, cosmopolitan city with so much energy, and I'm always impressed by the pace of change and innovation in China and just how warm people are. So it's a thrill to be here.
So obviously there are Chinese students in your college, one of the best, let's say, liberal arts university in the States. How do they perform, and what's your evaluation? Any advice to them?
Yeah, so they perform very, very well. We get superb students from China, and we've had students coming from China for many, many years, really since the 1980s. China is the largest contributor of the international students to Amherst College. And they come and they explore the entire curriculum. They're leading scientists, researchers, they're poets and artists. They're also very active on campus as student leaders. And they help not only our professors sometimes advance their own research, they help other students learn about the world. Amherst College prides itself on having a very diverse student body, and we believe that students learn as much from each other as they do from their professors, inside and outside of the classroom. The ones who come do perform very well. When they come, I do offer them a little bit of advice. I can't help myself as president. I tell them to take advantage of all of the resources at the college, not to be shy when they need to speak up and get a little help or get some direction on what they can take advantage of. And then I tell them that they should really explore, take some time to be curious. It's okay to make a few mistakes in college. It's one of the things we should learn in college is how to make a mistake and recover from that. And so I try to give them a little bit of permission to be easy on themselves. All of our students, including our students from China, have put a lot of pressure on themselves to get to Amherst. When they're there, we want them to relax a little bit and really learn.
Mm-hmm. What you mentioned about students being shy, especially from China, it reminds me of the cultural differences between China and the U.S. Right? In general, my understanding is the U.S. kids are encouraged to speak out. Chinese students are encouraged to work harder,
right.
But probably speak less. But of course, when they go to the U.S., things, the environment is completely different. There are some, let's say, cultural shocks or things like that. So it needs some time for them to adapt to the new.
Yeah, there is a little bit of cultural adjustment, but though we found our students have done really, really well, they have to get used to a different climate, a different way of living. They have to get used to the food. We actually have excellent Chinese food in Amherst, but I have to say after being a couple of days in Beijing, we still have room to grow. The food here is really spectacular. But you hit on I think the main piece of adjustment, which is that in American classrooms, we really do encourage students to participate, to speak up, ask questions, reflect on what they've been learning, and be part of the learning process. The advantage of Amherst is we have a very small classrooms. We have a very low teacher-to-student ratio, and so our faculty can go out of their way to make all of our students feel comfortable. So for our Chinese students, we feel like it's a fairly short adjustment period, and by the time that they've been there, not even a full semester, they're in the mix just as much as anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, on cultural shock, usually, let's say it's two-way, for Chinese students in the States and also for American students probably in China.
Yes.
So any advice for, upcoming young Americans who choose to study in China, for example?
That's a great question. First of all, I wish more young Americans did choose to study in China. I don't think you're going to be able to thrive and understand the pace of change in the globe in the next century unless you've had some exposure to China. I wish I had more as a student. So we're really, I think, need to do more in the United States to encourage students to come here and to learn. And so the thing that I would counsel them, people who do come, is to be patient. There's a lot to learn here. It's an enormous and interesting and complicated culture. The people are always, from what I can tell, happy to speak and talk and educate everybody who comes here about what it means to live in such a rapidly changing society, and they bring diverse perspectives, just like in the United States. So it's a lot to take in, and I don't think you're going to understand China just in a few days or a few weeks or probably even a few years. But after some time, you'll learn a little bit better about some of the amazing history and culture of this place and about how it's thinking about its future.
Well, indeed, and both China and the United States are, large countries in terms of size, population, history, everything. It takes a lot of time to really close look and study. That's the importance probably for people-to-people exchange. Of course, students learning from each other in each other's universities. Just a part of that kind of exchanges. Tell us more about your understanding. I mean, you are in this area of, cultivating young minds from around the world. How important is it, of people-to-people exchange, for national diplomacy, national relations?
It's essential. I mean, we know this, especially when you think about places like Amherst College and the leading universities in China. We're educating people who are going to be influential in the future, who are going to be leaders. And the world is large, but sometimes it also can be a small place. And relationships matter. The ability to understand people who come from different backgrounds is essential. The ability to think about things from multiple cultural perspectives is essential. And you can read, you can watch films, you can have artificial intelligence tell you everything you ever imagined you want from about a different country. But to really understand it, you have to have been there. And you have to know people from there. I don't know if there's any substitute for that. It's one of the reasons that at Amherst, we still do prize a form of education that feels archaic. We just bring small groups of people together to learn from one another. Mm-hmm. And people-to-people exchanges is about that same principle.
Mm-hmm. At least, people used to think probably if this, I'm not sure whether they still think so, like they say we have this internet, we have social media. It's like somehow you can bring people from around the world together instantly. But then people realize social media sometimes produce more misunderstanding or more problem.
Well, social media can offer something, but it gives us a very curated and sometimes distorted view of other people. Sometimes social media actually brings out the worst in us, right? Extreme emotions, whether happiness or sadness. And you and I both know, especially, I think we both have a few gray hairs, that most of your life is not lived at those extremes, right? It's in the day-to-day existence. And the internet can be a great way to get an introduction to somebody else and to a different culture, but it's never going to substitute for actually knowing people.
Face-to-face meetings and talk to each other. Yeah. That matters.
Yes, it does.
Of course, the Chinese side, since the two presidents, the Chinese president, the U.S. president, met with each other in San Francisco about part of their outcome of their meeting is to increase people-to-people exchange. For the Chinese side, President Xi Jinping promised of having, I think it's 50,000 young Americans for the next 5 years to study in China. What do you make of that kind of efforts? What kind of outcome expected out of that effort, maybe?
I like the ambition of it, and I think the impulse is exactly right. Especially, I find it really regretful that we've had this period where there have been some political tensions between the two countries that have kept some of these exchanges from being as robust as possible. One of the things I hope that comes out of this is that Americans understand that they're welcome in China. They're welcome to study, and I think that institutions like mine can do more to help our students understand that in fact it is possible and easy to come to China to study. And then on the reverse side, I think it's essential that Chinese students know that American institutions are thrilled to have them. All of our institutions are built on the premise that we want to welcome the brightest minds from around the world, and certainly China has many of the brightest minds in the world. And that they can be part of a dynamic, diverse community learn from Americans and help teach Americans about what they understand, how they understand the world, and how they understand their future. So I'm excited that this seems to be back on the table politically. I think we can do even more. And I think we all have to be in this for the long run. It's not going to be something that where a few students going back and forth are going to be the answer to all of the issues.
Yeah, obviously, not only the two sides, but also basically the rest of the world are also looking forward to the two countries, talking to each other instead of alienating each other, given, how important they are to the global economy and the security. And of course, at the same time, we do know that there's a discrepancy or imbalance, let's say, I think there's, according to reports, some 300,000 young Chinese studying in the U.S., but at the same time, there were only like 800 American students in China, of course, partly because of the pandemic and then the tension between two countries. What's your takeaway? Or is there anything we can do, probably?
Well, I do think there are things we can do, but we should start by recognizing that the students are seeking slightly different things. The students from China who come to the United States are generally seeking degree programs. They're excited by the fact that there are more universities in the United States that are considered top in the world in specific areas, and they're looking for long-range opportunities. The students coming from the United States to China are usually coming for shorter-term education in culture, history, language, politics, and maybe business, right? They're interested in understanding a little bit about the business world of China because they know that's going to be essential. I think we can make more of those kinds of opportunities if we're going to create the balance. And to follow up on something I alluded to earlier, I think we have to correct the misperception that it's difficult to come to China to study for an American, and we have to create more on-ramps. In the long run, we have to do more probably in the United States to give our students in early stages of their education, before they get to college and university, an understanding of the value of China, maybe even exposure to the Chinese language. Those are the kinds of things that will give them the confidence and interest to come here when they're college age.
Yes, in order to correct this imbalance, probably it takes some time, and from the efforts from both sides, China has issued this visa-free treatment, measures to, I think, about more than 10, European countries and some countries from Southeast Asia and other parts of the world. So can we expect more measures like this to facilitate probably travel between the two countries?
I think they will too, and I think also pop culture will help as well. Chinese television is starting to get exposure in the United States. Things like that actually do pique the interest of young people. So there's both policy measures and cultural trends that can facilitate exchange.
What's behind the next door? What motivates us to find the truth? To understand the world, we must see it from different angles. Never stop searching. Go deeper. Go further. Be open-minded. Be engaged. Open the door through dialogue, where ideas do matter.
Well, I'm thinking of we are living in this time of rapid changes, with artificial intelligence in particular. And people are questioning, not questioning education itself, but questioning probably how should education, adapt to these new challenges, new changes brought about by AI. What about the liberal arts education?
Right. So I think the liberal arts is going to be even more important in the age of AI. AI, artificial intelligence, is going to allow computers and computing to take over many of the routine technical pieces of knowledge work. What's going to be essential is that we're going to need people who can understand the limits of what the computing can do, who can understand what the important questions are that artificial intelligence will need to help us solve, and can understand how to be creative and communicate with each other in the way we were talking about earlier, across cultures, across difference, who can get in the room and persuade people to work together on the same problems. Those are things that machines are never going to be able to do for us. And those skills, those competencies, are the core of a liberal arts education. What we teach people is how to think and how to keep thinking and how to learn with each other. And those are going to be the people who can be not just successful in the age of AI, but who can actually be leaders in the age of AI.
Probably more important.
I think so. I think so, because these are the things that the machines can't do for us.
Speak of these universities, China is aspiring to obviously to build world-class universities here. We see the numbers are increasing of universities, but at the same time, people are concerned with the quality, not only quantity, but also what about the improvement of quality. What's your impression or understanding of the Chinese universities? So look at what are the challenges, what they should do probably to make more.
So I've learned a little bit about some of the things that Chinese universities are doing, and it's very impressive. One of the things that I think all of us in the United States are envious of is the scale at which China is building world-class universities and the investment in world-class universities in China. Investing in higher education is about investing in the future. And so all of us around the world are watching China and what it's doing with excitement, that it's willing to put such a stake in the ground in terms of thinking about the potential of its people. So the scale and the speed of innovation here in China is very, very impressive. At the same time, I'm sure it comes with many risks, right? As you said before, as you're trying to move quickly, you do need to make sure you're offering high quality educational programs. You need to make sure that you're building programs that are not going to just serve students for today, but going to serve them for 20, 30, 40 years from now, the world in which they're going to graduate. And I think the only thing that I would say, and I offer any advice with a great deal of humility because it's hard to build a new university, is that values are your most important thing. Right? You have to make sure, what are your values as a university? What is it you really prize? And how can you make sure those values are instilled in everything that you do? That's something I try to do as a leader of Amherst College. I think it's something that every college and university president tries to do wherever they are in the world.
Values, and of course it's a long-term consideration, right?
Yes.
About universities there, and how do you see this? General challenge probably to education around the world, and we talked about that, Amherst,
right?
What about because of the AI? For example, ChatGPT can help students write pieces.
Yes, it can.
And the professors have to decide.
Right. So there are some short-term challenges in figuring out how do we going to grade papers when ChatGPT can write papers. And most importantly, how do we make sure that students learn how to think and write for themselves before they start using machines to do that? But education has always, risen to the challenge of new technology. I'm sure there was a moment when the printing press was first developed and people thought that would put educators out of business. Certainly there was a moment when computing and the internet felt like a threat to many people around the world in terms of the way it gave access to information to everybody. Making new kinds of technology available will change how we teach and what we teach. And I think the biggest threat is that we look at that challenge, and instead of rising to it and investing more in education, that we back down. Right, that we say, oh, we don't know what we're doing, we shouldn't be spending so much money on education. A brighter future for humanity requires thinking ambitiously about the future and thinking long term. And there's no better return on that long-term investment than the time and energy and resources that you can put into the young people who attend colleges and universities.
Education is important. I think people understand that, of course. The Chinese culture, Chinese parents are known for emphasizing the next generation's education there. I know the cultures are different. Chinese culture, American culture, cultures in different countries, they are unique in their own ways. But if you compare Chinese culture, American culture in terms of education, what are their strengths? Where are there probably the area they need to improve or they can improve upon?
Well, I think the thing that I see when I meet with parents from China who've sent their students to Amherst and to the United States, what they share in common with their American counterparts is their profound belief that their children can lead a better life and that their children can learn things that will push the boundaries of knowledge beyond what they know themselves. And that's both exciting and scary, and I'm a parent myself, to think that your child is going to take something they've learned and do something slightly unpredictable. I so admire the Chinese parents whom I've met over the years who have entrusted their students to Amherst, a place that's very distant from them geographically, that is hard for them to visit sometimes, and it's a profound privilege to be able to educate them. I think what we all need to learn from each other is sometimes a little bit of patience, right? It's I think hard when your children are in college and it takes them some time to discern exactly what path they're going to be going on. Sometimes they change their mind. We think they're going to become one thing, they decide they're going to do something else, and then they end up doing a third thing altogether. And that's hard as a parent. And it's hard as a parent whether you're in China or the United States. And so we can all learn from each other maybe just a little bit of patience as our children work things through for themselves and sometimes come up with really exciting and unpredictable outcomes to where they're going to take their lives.
Despite the differences, it's the same, our love and the support
Yes.
to our children.
Yes. There's nothing like on graduation day at Amherst and many other colleges, watching the families, watching the parents and their children, and you really see a love that is transcendent, and it goes beyond any culture and language difference.
Mm-hmm. When you explain this to the Chinese parents, what's their response? Like when they send their kids far away in a different culture.
Yeah. The Chinese parents are terrific. They're incredibly supportive of the college. They love what they're doing. They're sometimes curious and they want to know more because they're not as familiar with the kind of education, some of them, that Amherst offers. So they ask a lot of good questions, and we're happy to answer them. We want them to have the information that they need so they can make a good decision for their family. And we also want them to understand what their children are going through. And we see them as partners in our students' education. And they've been incredibly generous with us emotionally. And meeting them on graduation day is one of the real pleasures of being a president of a college like Amherst.
Mm-hmm. Well, a question related to education. We know education is to really cultivate young minds to be rational, to be able to think independently, critically. Then recently, there's a UN resolution basically to establish an International Day for Dialogue Among Civilizations. Basically, they stress this equal dialogue and mutual respect. For people from different culture, different backgrounds to talk to each other in a manner, I guess, with equality and the respect. I mean, that's probably, I think, general people would say that's important, given this clashes, conflicts around the world. So we do need more dialogue, probably more minds ready for dialogue.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned, we were talking about social media earlier. Social media sometimes feels like dialogue, but it's not, right? It's not talking with each other,
That's
sometimes shouting at each other.
Yes.
And at that moment where that's the way that we interact, it feels like real dialogue is more necessary than ever. And this is something that we've been working on at Amherst College. How do we teach our students to speak with each other, and most importantly, how to listen to one another? And it's one of the advantages that we have as a small college, where we get students in small groups. They live with each other, and so they get to know people outside of the classroom. And then inside the classroom, they're often sitting around a small table in a room not much bigger than this one. And that kind of intimacy is the core of the Amherst College experience, and it promotes the kind of dialogue that you're talking about, and it feels more essential than ever, not just for international agreements, but for building strong cultures in any country.
Mm-hmm. Finally, tell us what's the general atmosphere, since you guys are from the States, right out of the U.S. Of course, in China, there is a kind of impression questioning whether the U.S. is still welcoming Chinese students or Chinese young people or visitors.
Right. No, I've heard that, and it's unfortunate that some Chinese have that impression. In fact, we're incredibly welcoming and desiring, and not just Amherst College, I think I speak for all my fellow institutions of higher learning in the United States. We see Chinese students as bringing to us incredible intelligence, wonderful character, great sense of humor, and bringing something to our campuses that is essential. And so we very much want to send the message that we are not just open to them, but actively seeking them and thinking that they would be wonderful additions to our campus. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to make sure that as many people as I can speak to will get that message from at least one college in the United States.
It's a great reassurance to the Chinese parents, of course, when they talk to you. And long-term, I know there's a long-term relationship between Amherst and the Chinese students. Probably, I mean, look into the future, years or decades from now.
I think it's going to be exciting because we've had students from China at Amherst for about 40 years. And what that means is we have more and more students who've come back to China and who are thriving here professionally. And one of the things that's really exciting about Amherst College is that our alumni network is an important part of the experience. And that network is going to grow and become even stronger. And it means that we're going to be able to offer students from China access to people successfully internationally who can help them wherever they want to go. So I'm very excited about the future, and I feel really lucky to be at Amherst, and I feel really lucky to spend a couple of days here in Beijing.
I wish you another 40 years success.
Thank you. Thank you.
For Amherst and their Chinese students.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for speaking with us. With that, we come to the end of today's discussion. Many thanks to President Elliott. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.